Good afternoon, students. Today we are going to do the poem Tiger in the Zoo, which is a class 10 Cbse poem. First of all, before I begin the poem, let me just in brief give the message of the poem to you all. What is the message of this poem? After we read this poem, we shall come to understand how every living creature, how every living being enjoys the right of staying in his or her own habitat and enjoy the bounty of nature, the blessings of nature. Okay, just because we are humans, we consider ourselves to be superior, and it is this superiority which drives us to encage, to confine the other animals and birds in cages for our own pleasure and entertainment. But in this poem, Leslie Norris, the poet, harps on this point, harps on this fact that every living being enjoys the right or has the right of being in his or her own natural habitat and enjoy the blessings of nature in abundance. Okay, here we begin the poem. Let's see how it conveys this message to the readers. He stalks in his vivid stripes the few steps of his cage, on pads of velvet smooth, in his quiet rage. So in this part, first of all, here the poet is talking about a tiger. The tiger is confined in a cage. Now, as you can understand, the cage has a very small space. So the tiger's movement is limited, confined in the small space. The tiger does not have the liberty to move around in a large space as it is used to in the forest. The tiger is a majestic beast who loves, who enjoys the abundant space of the forest. But here in this small cage in the zoo, it is confined to a very small space. As a result, or consequently, its movement is limited. It cannot move at its own free will. So he stalks, stalks. The word stalks, when I teach this in class, students often say that stalking is actually following someone on social media. But in this poem, stalks, in this sentence, stalks means he is moving in a confined space in a difficult way. He has difficulty in his movement due to the limited availability of space in the small cage. Vivid stripes, bright stripes. The bright black stripes on his yellow body. The few steps of his cage. So he's talking the few steps. So it is not an abundant space. The space is not adequate. The space is not enough. And so a tiger, a majestic beast like a tiger, faces problem while moving about in the small space of the cage. On pads of velvet quiet. The pads or the paw of the tiger is very soft and tender. It is as smooth as velvet. Pads of velvet is here a metaphor. What is the difference between a metaphor and a simile? In case of a simile, we have these words like as or like. These words are missing in a metaphor. In a simile, we have the parameter of comparison. She is as beautiful as a rose. So here I am saying, what is the parameter of comparison between her and the rose? Beauty. She is as beautiful as the rose. But if I say she is a rose, then you have to understand, you have to deduce, you have to infer that she and the rose, these two, they have been compared on the parameter of beauty. Okay, so in this case, pads of velvet quiet, it is not mentioned what is the parameter of comparison. You have to understand that velvet is very smooth, and the pad of a tiger, the paw of a tiger, is also very smooth and tender and soft. Therefore, the parameter of comparison is smoothness or softness. Therefore, this is a metaphor because the parameter is not mentioned and the comparative words like as or like are also not mentioned. So, pads of velvet quiet is a metaphor and not a simile. In his quiet rage. Why quiet rage? Number one, the tiger is a majestic beast who is used to moving about in the abundant space of the forest. But here in the confined space of the cage, the movement of the tiger is limited. So the tiger is enraged. The tiger enraged or furious. He is very angry, but he cannot express his anger. He cannot protest against his confinement. He cannot protest against his confined disposition. It is a suppressed rage. So quiet and rage, these are two opposite words. Rage is fury, quiet is calmness. When two opposite words are coupled or clustered together and they give rise to an absolutely different or opposite, absolutely different meaning, then we call it an oxymoron in English literature. So if I tell you that two opposite words, like say tall and short, but I join the two and ultimately the meaning is absolutely different, then it is called an oxymoron. Okay, like if I tell you that it was a loud silence. So silence is silence. Everything cannot be, nothing can be heard. And loud is something which is very much audible. So loud silence means the silence was so profuse that it was almost audible. The talkative girl gave out a loud silence after she suffered a blow in her life. So the silence is so profuse that it was almost emitting sound. So a loud silence. So in this case we have quiet rage. Rage is fury, quiet is calm. When these two words are clustered or coupled together, it means suppressed protest. It is a suppressed form of protest, right? So in the first stanza, we understand how very much suppressed, how very much tormented, tortured this tiger feels in his confined position in the cage. Okay, because I am repeatedly saying he's a wild beast. He's a magnificent, majestic beast who is used to move about in the adequate, abundant space of the forest. So the limited space of the cage in the zoo is absolutely not sufficient for him. It restricts his power. It controls, it confines its strength. Okay, next, I'll talk about the literary devices later. He should be lurking in the shadow, sliding through long grass near the waterhole where plump deer pass. So what is the tiger supposed to be doing? In the next stanza we come to that. The tiger is supposed to be moving about in the zoo, not to stay. He's not supposed to be in this cage. He's supposed to be moving about in the forest. He's supposed to be moving about in the wilderness of the forest. And there we have this long grass which help the tiger to ambush, to camouflage. They don't camouflage, they take ambush. And they pounce, they prowl on the deer when the flock of deer comes to drink water in the water hole. Then the tiger pounces on the deer from this secret place or position where he is hiding himself. So the tiger is supposed to be hunting its prey, pouncing on its prey. But on stark contrast, what is the tiger doing? The tiger is absolutely confined in its own position, in its own cage in the zoo. So it is here in the second stanza, our attention is drawn to this fact that the tiger's natural habitat has been changed. The tiger is not allowed to express his natural habits. The tiger is not allowed to enjoy the freedom of his existence. This is the second stanza, very significant. Now, he should be snarling around the houses at the jungle's edge, baring his white fangs, his claws, terrorizing the village. So the tiger, often they stay in the forest, and outside the forest there is a village. There are the villages, as you have heard about Sundarban. There is this village called the Bidhova Gram, a village full of the widows whose husbands have been seized away, taken away. Their lives have been seized by the tiger when they went to hunt in the forest. Okay, so just on the edge of the forest there is this village, and the tiger often comes out at night silently, stealthily, to steal the goat, to steal the children from the village. So the tigers are supposed to move about in this village at the edge of the forest, bearing their white fang. Fang is the canine teeth, the white canine teeth with which it tears or gnaws the flesh of the animals. And his claws, the claws are the sharp claws with which they tear the flesh. With canine, the canine is the teeth of the carnivore with which they tear the flesh. And the claw, with that, they also tear the flesh. This is used for eating and this is used for cutting. Okay. So like we cut and then we eat, so this tiger also with their claws, they tear the flesh and then they eat it. They devour the flesh. They enjoy the flesh. and terrorizing the village. The tiger is supposed to perpetrate, spread, P-E-R-P-E, perpet, T-R-A-T-E. So spread the terror in the village. They are supposed to enjoy the superiority. They are supposed to be the powerful beast. They are supposed to be the one who is going to keep the other people at their mercy. People should be at the mercy of the tiger. But here in the zoo, just the opposite thing is happening. Let's see what's that. But, very significant. The fourth stanza begins with the word but. So he's supposed to be doing all these things. He's supposed to enjoy his freedom. He's supposed to be the powerful one frightening the people. But he is locked in a concrete cell. His strength behind bars, stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. So he is locked in the concrete wall of the cell, of the cage. Cell means cage. His strength behind bars. So his strength is restricted behind the iron bars of the cage. He cannot manifest his strength. He cannot show. He cannot exhibit. He cannot display his strength. Because his strength is restricted. His strength is confined. He is confined in the four walls of the cage, and so his strength is restricted. He cannot express his strength. Stalking the length of his cage. He's just moving about in this small available space of the cage, and why is he feeling so depressed, and why is he feeling so frustrated? Because his movement is limited in this small availability of space, and he's ignoring the visitor. Why is the tiger ignoring the visitor? The tiger is ignoring the visitor first of all because he's frustrated, he's sad, he's disappointed, he's disheartened in this confined area of the cage. Number one. Number two, when we know that we are more powerful than this people, then this is one psychology where we want to prove our superiority through our silence. Because the tiger cannot use its usual methods of expressing its power, like baring its white fang, showing its claws, perpetrating terror. He cannot use these methods, these strategies of showing his power. So he's using this psychological trope, like, silent, with his silent disposition, with his silence, he's ignoring them. And that is how he's trying to prove his superiority. If you see a child, when a child is very angry, some children cry, they whip their heart out. Some children go absolutely quiet. They want the attention in this way. Like they will be silent and their parents will keep asking them, why are you sad? Why are you silent? Why are you not talking? So in this way they want the attention. The tiger in this case is similarly drawing the attention of the people. He's trying to prove his superiority by being silent. This is another explanation. Another very evident explanation is what? He's frustrated, he's depressed, he's absolutely sad, disheartened in this confined area of the cage, and so he is ignoring the visitors out of his frustration and sadness. Now, he hears the last voice at night. So in this way the day passes and all the sounds, they die down, and only the last sound is audible. And what is that sound? The patrolling car. What is the patrolling car? The cars of the police moving around, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. What is the similarity between the eyes of the tiger and the stars? Both are bright, both are shining, both are twinkling. What is the dissimilarity between the two? The eyes of the tiger belong to the tiger who is confined in the cage. On the contrary, the stars, they are shining brightly in the sky. So they are in the free space. The stars are in the starry sphere. The stars are in the free space of the sky. But the tiger's eyes belong to the tiger, obviously, and that is in the confinement of the cage. So a question often comes, what is the similarity and the dissimilarity between the eyes of the tiger and the stars in the sky? Similarity is in the radiance, in the brilliance, in the brightness, in the sparkle, in the glitter, in the glow, and dissimilarity is in the confinement and in the freedom. Understood? Now with this we would start discussing the literary devices in the poem. First of all, in the first stanza, in the entire poem, tiger has been personified. And tiger's paw, as I told you, pads of velvet smooth, it is a metaphor. Then, when the meaning of the two lines is the same and the first line is continued to the second line without any punctuation, it is called an enjambment. So, he stalks in his vivid stripes, the few steps of his cage is an enjambment. Now, the first stanza is an imagery, because the moment you read the poem, the picture of the tiger flashes across your mind's eye. So, it is obviously an enjambment. Next, use of the sound S like stalks, he's, and stripe is a consonance. And what is consonance? Consonance is the repetition of consonant sound in closely grouped word. And what is assonance? The repetition of vowel sound, like vivid stripe, I. Now, quiet rage, as I told you, it is an oxymoron. Okay. Now, next, he should be lurking in the shadow. Again, you see enjambment, like sliding through the long grass near the water hole where the plump deer pass. Same idea is passing. It is not only about the absence of punctuation, it is also about the same idea in the consecutive lines without any punctuation. Again, an imagery in the second stanza. Plump deer pass, alliteration, PP. Third stanza. Yes, again an enjambment we are seeing. Now this one you will find out and text in the comment box. I will not say. Now snarling is an onomatopoeia, because snarling is, the moment you hear the word snarling, you remember the howling, growling sound of the tiger. Okay, so it is a sound word which is reminding you of the sound. So it is obviously onomatopoeia. And the assonance and the consonants, again you are going to find out following the rule, and then I will again say in the other video. Now the third stanza. Again, we have personification and alliteration behind bars. Assonance and consonants, locked, concrete, and cell. The E sound is repeated. So, assonance. And the consonants, his, strength, and bars. S sound is repeated. Okay. What is the difference between assonance, consonants, and alliteration? In all three, there is a repetition of sound. In alliteration, this repetition should be essentially in the initials of the letter. In assonance and consonants, they can be in any position of the words, but assonance refers to the repetition of consonant sound, and consonance refers to the repetition of consonant sound. The last stanza, again we have alliteration, he hears, HH. Enjambment, again we have, and stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. And finally assonance is in the I sound, with, his, and brilliant. Okay, I sound. So with this we come to the end of this poem. And what is the message? As I told you, that every living creature has the right to enjoy his own freedom in his own habitat. So we the humans, just because we consider ourselves to be superior, we don't have the right to subjugate the other animals to pain for our own pleasure and entertainment. So we should always allow everyone to enjoy their own freedom in their natural habitat. So in some way it is an environment poem. I will discuss about this in some other video, because the time limit of this video is almost about to get over. So it is an environment poem, a poem spreading awareness about environment. About this I will discuss in some other video. Thank you.